So it is absolutely true that having children sanctifies you. There is a verse in the Bible that says women will be saved through childbearing, and I think that is what it is saying, that women, we are tested, we are pushed, we are elevated closer to the Lord when we have children.
Quiverfull is a fundamentalist Christian movement that believes in procreation by any means necessary. It is the belief that any form of birth control, from the pill to vasectomies, is a grave sin, and that you should continue to have children even if you cannot afford to raise more, and even if it will endanger the life of the mother. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Silver Fox, and if you're new here, on this channel I talk about classic literature, films, pop culture, and whatever I feel like talking about. And today I feel like discussing the quiverfull movement. But let's pause and talk about our digital footprint for a second. Have you ever Googled your own name or the name of a family member and so much information popped up? I mean, full name, address, photo, names of other relatives associated with that person. It's honestly kind of scary how easily our information leaks onto the internet. But thanks to today's sponsor Incogni, that doesn't have to weigh so heavily on your mind. Incogni helps protect your private information from data brokers who gather and sell it. Having your personal data floating around for anyone to find is bad for a myriad of reasons, including it being accessed by stalkers, future employers, or people looking to scam your loved ones using AI. We all know at this point how I feel about AI. Not a fan. And with the advancement of AI, it has become super easier for them to replicate someone's voice or image. So imagine someone calling up your loved one using your voice, and thanks to the information about you that has leaked on the internet, they can accurately pretend to be you. They know your name, they know where you live, they know the name of your loved ones, they know specific personal details about you. It just seems completely credible. But Incogni will contact over 230 data brokers on your behalf and request the removal of your data. And thank God, because data breaches seem to be increasing every single year. I can't tell you how many times in 2025 I picked up my phone to see that another company has had another data breach. 1 million customers' information is out there, and I know I'm one of them, and there's not really anything I can do about it. But with Incogni, I can actually do something about it. I'm not just completely helpless. And it makes me feel so much better because I have signed up for a lot of services and random websites, and they have my information out there, and Incogni helps protect you from all of that. Oh, and did you know that data could be used to increase the price of your health insurance? I just found this out recently, and it makes me so mad to think about. Health insurance, here in the US at least, is already pretty freaking outrageous. And if there's anything at all we can do to make it more manageable for ourselves, I think that we should. And with my code SilverFox, you can get a really great deal on Incogni right now. So just click the link in my description to get a really fantastic deal on protecting your data. And PSA, Incogni is risk-free for 30 days, so you can just try it and find out if it's your cup of tea or not. So just use my code SilverFox at the link in my description, because you deserve your privacy. And thank you so much Incogni for sponsoring today's video, and now back to the studio. So today we will be discussing the quiverfull movement in depth, along with prominent members of the quiverfull movement such as the Duggars, the Frankies, the Plath family, and even some non-religious large families like the Resilient Jenkins, just as an example of what large families being exploited on social media can look like. I talked briefly about the quiverfull movement in my video on biblical submission and purity culture here, but that was just a small section. I really want to dive into and explore more in depth here. So the focus of this video is the quiverfull movement and what that is and what it means and how it affects people. Let's get started. Just a reminder, in case you're new here, I am a Christian. I grew up fundamentalist evangelical, so I'm very familiar with this world. And although I am a Christian, I no longer believe the harmful ideologies I am laying out for you here. I'm not here to judge Christianity as a whole. I know there are good Christians in this world, but it is very important to call out harmful practices within the church. It is very important to call out cult-like practices within the church and things that harm women and children and people in general. And so that's why I talk about this. In this video, when I talk about this, I am not saying that all Christians are heinous, evil people and that every Christian absolutely believes this and participates in this. And just because I am a Christian, I am not saying that at the end of this video you should convert to my religion and believe everything I believe. I'm just here to share my knowledge on the subject with you all and hopefully raise awareness, and maybe if you are in this particular sect of Christianity, maybe this will be a little bit eye-opening to the harms that it can do to people and why so many people have pushed back against it. But I'm not here to say you need to give up Christianity, but we can all strive to be more Christ-like, and that means to care about others and help people out and not do things that are going to detrimentally hurt other people. So, yes. Sorry for that disclaimer, but let's go ahead and get started. For some backstory, Quiverfull is a more conservative Christian movement that started in the early mid-20th century. It comes from the Bible verses Psalms 127 verses 3 through 5, which says, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them." And people began to circle around this passage in the Bible and interpret it to mean that children are an absolutely necessary part of life. Which is true in the sense that if nobody was having children, mankind would cease to exist. But they interpret it to mean that everyone should have kids, and those who are not having kids are committing a sin. That it's a necessary part of everyone's life, but especially the lives of Christians, because every kid that you give birth to is a child in the Lord's army or an arrow in your quiver. Many people who participate in the Quiverfull movement believe it is a sin to prevent pregnancy in any form. Every single form of birth control you can think of, they don't believe in it. Even just abstaining from sex, they surprisingly do not believe in. Inside of marriage. You can't have sex outside of marriage. That's not okay. But inside of marriage, you have to be regularly having sex. I'll get into that in a minute. But while they say they believe in leaving the amount of kids they have up to God, not preventing and just letting things happen, they're often not really leaving things up to God. They're actively trying to have children. And even if they're not trying, it's pretty much inevitable that unless you have fertility issues, you are going to be having a bunch of kids because they view sex as something ritualistic, something that must be performed routinely with their spouse whether they want to or not.
If you see sex as a non-negotiable, that changes things. The minute you start seeing it as something that's like an option, or that's something that like if all the circumstances and if all of these things are perfectly aligned, then we will do it, especially after you have kids, you're never going to do it. But if you view it as like this chore, as this like thing you have to do, as something that you just don't want to do, that really changes it. And I would set yourself up too, if you're like trying to get back into the swing of things, to set it up in a way where it's like you don't let more than 48 hours go past without being intimate. If you are only being intimate once a week, that is not enough. You are failing very, very poorly.
There were times when I was like, I don't want it, but like Paul's not gonna feel loved or whatever. We actually ended up just setting up where we had sex once every other day. And if we happened to have it 2 days in a row, yippee! But like we made a schedule, and there have been times when like Paul and I have gotten into an argument, or like we're just not communicating very well, and we're both like, okay, we're not feeling it, but we just need to have sex, because after that we tend to get back on the same page.
They think of having sex with their spouse as fulfilling their duty to God.
We view sex as one of the most beautiful things in our covenant marriage before the Lord.
And for people who are audio only, I have a video playing on the screen right now. It's muted because the music is copyrighted, but it's something Morgan Olliges of Paul and Morgan recently posted that says, sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do in your marriage is to go have sex, which is a crazy statement. And Morgan and also Melina Ciciotti, who I will be playing clips from, I don't think either of them particularly ascribe to the Quiverfull movement, but they are definitely fundamentalist and overall in the same area and have similar views about sex and pregnancy and birth control, and so that is why I use them as examples, because these are very outspoken people in similar spaces who I'm using as an example. But here she is literally saying that having sex is a spiritual act, and in that way sex is a form of worship that brings you closer to God. And for some, they might even have God in mind while engaging in sex.
I'm all about meeting my husband's needs and becoming one with my husband. And the funny thing is, my husband calls it worship, that really like freaked me out for a little bit. But when you allow the Holy Spirit to become one with you and your husband, it's a whole nother level. It isn't just us. We are inviting God into our entire life.
They view sex as something between you, your partner, and the watchful eye of God. And while as a Christian I believe God can see everything, I don't believe God is paying special attention to you and your spouse being intimate. I don't think he's up there cheering, thinking, woo, they're worshiping me really good today. Because that's crazy. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just think that it's a really, really weird way to view sex. And I think it is also that view that gives a lot of people problems with feeling comfortable with sex. A lot of people say, don't do anything in your life that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing in front of Jesus. Most people are not going to feel comfortable engaging in sex, even in holy sex within marriage, with the idea that Jesus is watching them do it. Most people don't get off on that kind of voyeuristic fantasy. Some do, I guess. I need to not get too in-depth into the purity culture aspect. I've already covered that in-depth in another video. Let me get back to quiverfull movement. But before we get into that, a couple disclaimers. I have some trigger warnings. I would have mentioned them at the very beginning of the video, right out of the gate. But YouTube limited a previous upload of this video, so I am taking some things out, rearranging some things, and I unfortunately might have to censor part of this video, which I absolutely hate doing because I don't like censoring important and heavy words, but I can't afford to lose ad revenue right now. I am so sorry. I hope you will understand. But I want to include a trigger warning right now for talking about SA, sexual shaming, child abuse as the title mentioned, and coercion and things of that nature, and I will be getting into really dark topics about marriage dynamics and how parents treat children and sexuality and all the things that entails. I will try to put trigger warnings on the screen as they come up, but I think if I say it out loud, I might get demonetized. I am so sorry. Many fundamentalist Christians, which is the group that makes up the majority of the quiverfull movement, believe it is a sin to deny your spouse sex for any period of time. And many often believe that consent does not exist within the confines of marriage, that your body belongs to your spouse once you get married and vice versa.
Your body, and Paul says this, your body is not your own anymore.
This is not across the board. Not all of them believe this, but a lot do. They believe that your partner does not need consent from you in order to have sex with you. But they believe that you can and should have sex nearly every day, no matter how much you don't want to.
When my husband desires me, I know that's from the Lord. My husband isn't going to desire me. I am like almost 40 years old. I do not look the same. My body does not look the same. My husband's desire for me, I 100% believe is from the Lord. So when you represent the Lord, when you are living in obedience to God, your husband will desire you. And so the desire my husband has for me, I do not deny him.
They expect you to have a bunch of children, and then, despite raising those children and dedicating your lives to them 24/7, you're also supposed to be sexually available to your partner 24/7.
There is very rarely a good excuse to not make yourself available for your husband.
But since they believe in such a ritualistic view of sex and that it is necessary to be in the routine of having sex even if you don't want it, as long as you are fertile, you're probably going to have a lot of kids because you're going at it without a condom every night. Not to be crude, although there are much more crude ways I could say that. I'm being very tame, I think. Or am I? Let me know. Let me know if I need to filter myself more or less when I talk about topics like this, because I, growing up in this belief system, feeling very uncomfortable with even the word sex itself, I can sometimes feel really awkward talking about this, although I think it's important. So just let me know. Am I being too crass? Am I being way too sheepish? I'll let you guys decide on that one. But even those who claim they're leaving the number up to God will also admit that they're trying for another one. But why are you trying if it's not supposed to be your decision? I'm getting ahead of myself though. Let me explain the movement a bit more. It's not a religion in and of itself, and it's not technically a cult in the sense that there is no specific leader. You don't go to meetings for this. It is not an organized group. It is just a subset of beliefs within a specific religion that a lot of people really adhere to. And although it is not a cult, a lot of cults and cult-like organizations such as the IBLP, which is the Institute of Basic Life Principles, share in the quiverfull belief and made great efforts to push the quiverfull ideology into the mainstream. The Duggars, aka the family from TLC's 19 Kids and Counting, are a member of the Quiverfull movement and were a part of the IBLP and are the most famous Quiverfull family out there. And they certainly made a lot of strides in pushing that idea out to the public and normalizing it. Another family that could be considered Quiverfull are the Frankies, a Mormon family that used to run a successful vlogging channel before the mother was arrested and sentenced to how many years? She was put in prison for child abuse. I do not want to go into the details of the horrific abuse her children suffered at her hands and the hands of Jody Hildebrandt, her therapist. And I think most people who want to know anything about that subject already do, but if you don't, just type in Ruby Frankie, a lot of stuff will show up. What truly happened to them was terrible. But I thought this would be kind of a good way to segue into the abuse that can be present in Quiverfull families. Now, obviously the Frankie situation was much worse than normal, with Ruby Frankie essentially trying to kill her kids because she believed they were demon-possessed. But nonetheless, a lot of bad things can go on even in the most well-adjusted Quiverfull houses. The book To Train Up a Child by Michael and Debbie Pearl is a horrific book that has been linked to the deaths of 3 children. The book encourages parents to beat and even whip their children. It catalogs many methods of physical and psychological torture that can be used to break the kid's will.
There was an example in Michael Pearl's book called To Train Up a Child, where it talked about how to rid your child of the lying spirit. And the way that you do that is Debbie Pearl, in this book, she was like, we had a son that had trouble with lying. So what I started doing was every single day I would give him a spanking, whether he lied or not. And I would say to him, this is because I don't know if you lied to me today. And he got tired of getting a spanking every day, whether he lied or not. So he eventually stopped telling them lies. This is what she's saying in the book. And my mom was like, oh, that's such a great idea because you love to tell lies about things. So this is what we're going to implement for you. Also, one of the main themes in the book is that some children are born with very strong wills.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, it is your job to break their will. Because if you can't break their will, then they can never fully submit to God or the church or whatever this is. And I heard from the time I was a very young child, you're strong-willed, and it is our job as your parent to break that, which they certainly tried.
This is a book that is very popular with a particular group of fundies who fall very heavily into the Quiverfull sphere. In fact, many fundies believe in hitting their kids. And when I say fundy, I mean fundamentalist Christian, that's what that's short for. But in fact, many fundies believe in hitting their kids, as they take the Bible verse that says, spare the rod, spoil the child, quite literally. Also, spare the rod, spoil the child is not the exact Bible verse. It is a very common paraphrasing of 2 popular verses in Proverbs about disciplining your children. Maddie Pruitt, a former Bachelor contestant who married into a rich family and now has a religious podcast, where she talks a lot about life and her faith. I shared some clips of her in my last video, where she talked about how a woman can invite the wrong attention, or the wrong kind of guy, by simply making a certain face or a certain pose that has implications of seduction or something. It can imply that you're more loose, basically victim blaming women for the way men treat them. Here's another clip of her where she and her husband talk about beating their child.
First and foremost, you need to know that the Lord's discipline is never disciplined out of emotion. Me and Maddie will discipline Hosanna out of emotion at times.
This was recorded when their daughter was 4 months old, by the way.
So think about it. When you have a child, you don't just discipline them for being good and obeying you, right? Like if Hosanna obeys us, we're not like, come here, girl, come here. All right, pull him down. Get the, mama, get her. Which will be hilarious when we start spanking Hosanna. Which we will, on the record, because the Bible so clearly says.
Clear about that.
It says, folly is bound up in a child, but discipline drives it far away.
Well, and it also specifically talks about discipline with the rod.
With the rod. It says it will not kill them.
Because some people could say, well, you can discipline them with timeouts. Hold on. It says with the rod.
She's going to get a little bit. It's not going to be, yeah.
And it's not, and it's going to be in a very loving way of saying, hi, sweetheart, do you know why you're being disciplined? Mommy does not want to discipline you. Mommy does not enjoy having to spank you, but there are consequences to disobedience.
100%.
And
This video thankfully got a lot of backlash. In this video, they are talking about their infant child who was recently born and how when she gets older, they look forward to hitting her. Lovely stuff. Now, she's not Quiverfull as far as I know. She only has 1 kid right now, and I simply haven't scoured through her videos enough to know exactly how she feels about having a bunch of kids, or if she plans to have more. I don't know if she would call herself quiverfull or how she feels about that movement, but she falls very much in the fundy and evangelical viewpoint that would support the quiverfull movement. I'm sure there are a lot of people who watch her videos who would consider themselves quiverfull. So what I'm saying is a lot of quiverfull families are going to abide by the same belief system and viewpoint that she talks about in her videos, including hitting her kids. But they have similar interpretations of the Bible because they are from the same sect of Christianity. I hope I'm making sense. Another form of abuse that pretty much always takes place in these households is parentification. This is where the older children are forced to take on more parental roles towards the younger children and essentially raise their younger siblings. Children raising children. A lot of fundy families love to capitalize on their pregnancies and make birth announcement videos online. I say birth announcement like 20 times in the section because I am stupid, but I meant pregnancy announcement. Sorry about that. Along with, every form of video along through the pregnancy, gender reveal, all that stuff. But in these birth announcement videos, where they gather the whole family together and say, "I'm pregnant," you often see the older children in the videos looking absolutely freaking devastated that there's going to be another child they have to raise. This happens a lot with the Collins family, where anytime the mother, Carissa Collins, announces a new baby, the older kids look so upset. And I believe there's been times they've even stormed out of the video after she told them she was having another kid. I will not be sharing those clips because I don't want to have more videos and images of kids on my channel than necessary. And if I were to share it and blur their face out, that would defeat the purpose of showing how upset they look. So this is unfortunately just a source, trust me bro kind of moment. But it's definitely out there. If you feel the need to go look it up yourself, you can verify that on your own. I show the pictures so you can see how large the families are, but I don't want to show videos of these kids. The reason I showed footage of the Duggars and the Frankies is because the Duggars were on television. Most of them are adults now, and it's the same with the Frankies. The videos I showed were of the kids who were older, and they're adults now. But all of the Collins kids are still very much kids, so no thank you. Lots of older kids of big families who are now adults have spoken out about how this parentification was very harmful for them, as it essentially took away their childhood and their freedoms and their autonomy. They were forced to be parents to kids they did not consent to having. And when I say parents, I mean parents. I don't just mean that they had to babysit and watch their siblings every now and then. I mean they were fully responsible for some of these children. They had to wake up in the middle of the night to feed the baby, change the diapers, cook meals for their younger siblings, do the laundry for the whole house. And as soon as these kids get old enough to drive, you just know they're going to be responsible for taking their siblings to school, if they go to school. More on that in a minute. But taking their siblings to school or to appointments or to any activities. These kids are raising their siblings.
Though my parentification began very young, it was my mom's final pregnancy that I think really intensified it and solidified it. Because for 9 months, I was basically in charge of our home while my mom slept and threw up and repeated the cycle. We were not a quiverfull family in numbers, but we were one in values. And as the oldest daughter in such a family, I felt alone and overwhelmed much of the time. I desperately wanted more siblings, especially ones closer to my age. Being homeschooled and isolated meant that siblings were our only options for consistent friendship and socialization.
This is very taxing to these literal children who are forced to become pseudo-parents to their younger siblings because the actual parents will not raise their kids. Because it is a fact that once you have a certain amount of kids, you simply cannot give adequate time to each child. And every time you have another kid, it only makes it harder. The Collins family openly admits this fact. The mother has said pretty much verbatim that she does not have time for her children, and that the kids get one-on-one time on their birthdays. As if that's enough.
Another thing, one of the biggest things people tell me is you don't have enough time to meet all of their emotional needs and you don't give them enough time, and what about one-on-one time, and they are not fulfilled and they don't feel loved, and blah, 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 blah. They have each other, and me and my husband will die and they won't have us. My goal is not to create dependent children on me and my husband. My goal is to teach them to thrive And also, I'm not having children for me, I'm having children for him. And these are the children he wants born. So if they miss some one-on-one time, they're alive and they get to live their calling and their purpose for God. Where does it say we have to have one-on-one time with our children? Where does it say that we have to meet their emotional needs?
Here is a clip of Olivia Marie Plath, one of 10 siblings, talking about her experience with parentification.
And then after the 2 brothers came 4 girls. And I was the second daughter. And so a lot of the parentification that happened in our childhood fell on me and my older sister. I definitely feel like I've already raised a couple of kids. I've taught kids how to read. I've potty trained them. I've slept in their room and gotten up with them throughout the night when they cried. Especially during a period when there was always a new baby. It was too much for my mom. And my mom had so many health issues from having kids that should have stopped her from having kids and didn't, because my dad was like, if God wants you to, you will.
The Duggars famously had a buddy system in which the older siblings were assigned 1 or 2 much younger siblings to look after, and they were the sole caretaker of these children. It was their full responsibility, and these older siblings often shared a room with these younger siblings, not only to watch after them, but because in these quiverfull households, there was pretty much never enough room for everybody.
Central to that is the family's version of the buddy system.
The buddy system really means that mom cannot be everywhere at all times, and so my older children help to take care of the younger children.
Every Duggar has at least one buddy. If you're too old to need help from a buddy, that means you're ready to take on a younger buddy. A big buddy helps you get dressed, brush your teeth, comb your hair, get your breakfast, do your schoolwork, learn to play violin and piano, and sew. They're there to pick you up when you fall and keep track of you when you're out and about. Without the buddy system, this house might cease to a halt. No one is exempt from the buddy brigade. Jim Bob's buddy is Michelle, and Michelle reserves the privilege of being each of the children's first buddy.
When the baby is born, it's my buddy until it's weaned. And then from there, it goes to the other buddy, whoever's turn it is to get a buddy.
The Resilient Jenkins are not religious as far as I know, but they are a great example of this. This is a family of 7, I believe, 5 kids, I think, that previously lived all together in a 1-bedroom apartment, but they were recently kicked out and have downgraded to a motel room, where 7 people all live together in one motel room. Now, this here is the epitome of a family that is not trying to do better. If you know anything about them, you know that tons of people have seen their situation, and hundreds of thousands of viewers have given them support financially, emotionally. A lot of people have donated to help them, and their situation only seems to be getting worse. They don't seem to be buying anything to provide for their children, or making any efforts to move into a real house. The father of the family even refuses to get a job.
I'll let you guys know why I can't get a job, or don't. It's not that I don't. It's that I don't want to. I don't like people telling me what to do. I don't like being somewhere I don't want to be for an extended period of time. And people be having attitudes. Customers be having attitudes, and I don't like to deal with it. So I'll just walk out. I will not show up the next day.
And yet the mother still proudly says she wants to have even more kids. Even in this circumstance, she wants more. She's not trying to improve their situation, and yet she wants to bring more kids into the mix. But even quiverfull families that are trying to improve their situation often struggle to do so, because having kids is really freaking expensive, you guys. It's a lot. But the quiverfull movement boldly encourages people to continue to have kids even if they do not have the financial means to do so. Even if these parents are very well aware that they do not have the time or the money to continue to raise more children, that they should still have more, and choose to believe that they will find a way to make it work, that God will find a way to make it work.
So me and my husband, we are not wealthy. People have this misconception that we have all this money and we can just provide. That is incorrect. We probably make less than the average family of 4. And every time we cannot provide for our next child when I conceive. Is it a burden? Yes, but if you give that burden to the Lord, you don't have to worry about it. We know, we don't think, and we don't believe, we know when we conceive, God will make a way for that next child. I cannot allow my emotions, my thoughts, my feelings to overcome who God wants to be in my life. So financially, we either trust him or we don't. Like everyone says, fine, have 10 kids as long as you can provide for them. Well, I never could. Ever.
This is something espoused by the Collins, the Duggars, and many others. There was a lot more quiverfull families I wanted to mention today besides just these few, but I'm realizing this is going to be a long video without me diving into that many avenues. But with the Duggars, the father, Jim Bob, was a car salesman before the family got their own TV show and was able to actually afford their lifestyle. The family mentioned how they struggled to put food on the table. They lived in a very small house where the kids just couldn't fit, and yet they kept having more. They really relied on the assistance of other people because they simply couldn't afford the amount of kids they had, but that never stopped them from having more. And here's the thing. Relying on assistance isn't inherently a bad thing. I think it's important that assistance is there. I fully support reaching out to people in need. I don't think there's any shame in it, and I also really support food stamps and SNAP benefits, and I think people talking recently about how people are abusing the system, blah, blah, blah. I sincerely believe very few are, and I don't believe in stripping the help away from those who need it because a handful might abuse it. I don't believe that. And when I say that these people are reaching out for help, I don't mean that to demean them. I just mean they are very aware that they cannot financially support to keep having kids, and yet they make having more kids a priority, and I do not think that is in any way smart, and it is cruel to the children that you know you can't afford to raise, that you just intentionally have anyway, and hope something works out for them. You're not really putting the child's best interest first when you quite literally know you can't afford to give them proper time, attention, and care, or any of that, and you're just hoping the money and the means fall into your lap. I'm not saying abandon your kids, but maybe don't have 19 of them when you know you can hardly afford just a few of them. It is irresponsible, and it is cruel to the children. It just is. But there's no shame in getting help. And if you find yourself pregnant and want to make it work, I'm not shaming that either. I'm just saying actively going out of your way to have a bunch of kids when you know you can afford them. That's the problem. I hope I'm being clear about that. Carissa Collins is another one who has outright said she could never afford to have kids, and yet she chose to continue having them anyway. She fully advocates for having kids you cannot afford. She tells others to do the same. She says it doesn't matter if you can't afford to have kids, you should just have them. She also spoke at length about how she believes any form of birth control is a sin. Even pulling out. She believed that Onan in the Bible was killed by God for pulling out. So, she basically believes it's a sin for a man to not ejaculate in a woman when they have sex. Not basically, that's literally exactly what she believes. But she believed any form of birth control was a sin, and her husband didn't really agree with this, and he didn't want to have more kids, but she basically over years wore him down and forced him to see her point of view, and so now they have a bunch of kids and continue to have more. They have at least 7, maybe more. I will put the number up on the screen. They are continuously having more kids. But of course, having sex outside of marriage is also a sin. But not having sex inside of marriage is a sin too. And pulling out when you do have sex is a sin. And so is wearing a condom or taking the pill or anything else. So, is protection still a sin if you're having sex outside of marriage? Is it doubly a sin to have protected sex outside of marriage, or is it doubly a sin to get pregnant outside of marriage? Which one's worse? I know they're going to shame you more for getting pregnant, because you're a whore, but which one's the bigger sin? I guess we'll never know, because these families also generally don't support sex education.
Okay, did you use birth control?
Oh, Dee, we went to Catholic school, so...
Okay, so you're allowed to have premarital sex, but you're not allowed to use birth control?
No, all right, you're twisting words here and then getting cute.
Anyway, I'm being a bit too sassy today, I'm sorry. But the idea that birth control is a sin because it kills the child is not a viewpoint that is unique to Carissa Collins. It's pretty widely accepted by the entire quiverfull movement.
A lot of you might not understand that the birth control pill does cause abortions. I mean, one part of it, or 2 parts of it, are there to prevent prevent pregnancy, but the third part of it actually causes abortions. And when did you first learn about that?
Well, you know, I've done a limited amount. I've done some research on the abortion, on the abortion-causing drugs, and there's a lot of them out there. And I think people are shocked to understand what is it, what this really is about.
And I went back on the pill, and I ended up getting pregnant while on the pill, and we ended up losing that baby. And that was very difficult for us, because here we were parents holding this one baby in our arms, enjoying being a mama and a daddy, and then realizing that with our own lack of knowledge, just allowing one of our own babies to be destroyed. That was painful.
My first appointment, they said there is a bleed in the sac and you're going to miscarry. I fell to my knees, came home, fell to my knees and said, God, please don't take this baby. Why do I have the bleed? And I felt the Holy Spirit tell me that because I had taken the birth control, that is what had caused that. And that I needed to repent and that God would heal it. So that is what I did. I repented. My next appointment, the bleed was gone, and we had our fourth baby.
Carissa Collins also speaks about how her doctor has recommended for her health that she not have any more children, and yet she has gone on to have several children after that, ignoring the advice of her doctor and encouraging other women to do the same. Women have reached out to her saying, my doctor says I shouldn't have more kids because I've had a C-section, or various other questions such as that. And she would go on to encourage these women to continue to have kids against medical advice. And I cannot stress this enough. Do not listen to Carissa Collins for anything. Listen to your doctor, please. She has also said that she will continue to have kids against medical advice because she doesn't care if she dies in childbirth, because apparently to her, having kids is more important than raising those kids, which is sort of in line with a lot of what quiverfull and fundy people believe. The act of giving birth and bringing these children into the world is much more important than raising them up and giving them a good life. And with that mindset, it makes it really obvious why parentification is so rampant in these families. Besides the fact that they literally do not have time to put into raising all of these children, they also just don't view it as that much of a priority. It's about giving birth, nothing else. These little ones are on their own after that. But like I said earlier, if you're having those kids outside of marriage, they'll certainly shame you a lot more than they would for committing the sin of using protection, because for a lot of quiverfull families, everything is purely aesthetics based. It's about how it looks. It looks worse from the outside to be pregnant, so they'll shame you more for that. A lot of this is simply just appearance based. It's not really about morality. It is about the appearance of morality. They want to look as though they are righteously serving God, and having a bunch of kids inside of marriage is a really great way for them to show that to every person who passes them by. A lot of other aesthetics tie into this, such as the cottagecore and tradwife aesthetic. A lot of these quiverfull fundy people really strive for this look because this really is look-based for them. Another big kind of quiverfull family that exemplifies this is Ballerina Farm, aka the Nealman family. If you've ever seen that video of a woman hoping her husband got her tickets to Greece for her birthday, and instead he bought her an apron, you're familiar with the Nealmans. They are an incredibly rich family that own a farm, and the face of the family, Hannah Nealman, posts a lot of cottagecore homesteading content across her social medias, and they are honestly kind of one of the most popular faces of the tradwife movement. Even though she doesn't call herself a tradwife, she very much portrays the life that tradwives aspire to live. They are what a lot of people aspire to be, but their life is simply unattainable. The average person isn't going to marry the heir of an airline and have a $20,000 stove in their kitchen. Even the lifestyle they present is unattainable to the Nealmans themselves, with the husband seemingly controlling the wife, and the children allegedly appearing to be running around unsupervised on their farm, because I guess it's too exhausting to watch them all, I'm not really sure. But it seems to be a struggle for them to keep up with their own lifestyle. But they don't want you to know that. It would ruin everything. In the quiverfull movement, it is not about actual morality and faith. It is about appearances. The purpose of having a dozen kids is to look faithful to the Lord, and it's important to rein those kids in by any means necessary to give the appearance that you have a good family and that you are a good parent. This is exemplified in Ruby Franke, who loved to show off her family life and convince the internet she was a perfect mother. Meanwhile, she was abusing her kids behind closed doors. I'm not saying abuse is present in every quiverfull family, but there are certainly a lot of elder children of quiverfull families who have spoken out about the abuse they suffered in these families. The extreme strictness, because it was about appearances, it was about doing things a certain way in public. It was a very strict, rigid lifestyle, because you were meant to serve God and look as though you were serving God, and anything else was unacceptable. And in their view, serving God means listening to your parents no matter what and never disobeying them in anything ever. Ever. In one episode of 19 Kids and Counting, Josh Duggar, the oldest sibling, got married. The show loved to hype up the wedding episodes because, of course, getting married and having kids is the most important part of a good Christian's life, and you are dishonoring and disobeying God if you do anything else. But in this particular episode, they showed Jim Bob giving the sex talk to Josh before his wedding. I don't know if it was the day of or a couple days before, but it was right before his wedding. The father sat him down and gave him the talk. Because, of course, in this viewpoint, you're not allowed to know anything about sex until the very moment you are ready to have sex. And you're not ready to have sex until you're married, because it is absolutely unequivocally a sin before then. Now, obviously, the show didn't show exactly what was said to him, because this is an ultra-religious family show, but it was very obvious that Jim Bob sat him down and gave him the talk that day. This was a particularly heinous and calculated move, giving Jim Bob and the whole family was already aware at this time that Josh Duggar had molested several girls prior to this. He had molested his 2 younger sisters, as well as, if I remember correctly, another girl he had been dating when he was a teenager. Jim Bob was very aware of this, as Josh had confessed to his father years prior and had been reprimanded by simply going to a summer camp. And I don't know if he was already watching porn at this point, but that's definitely something he watched a lot of later in life, as he would be arrested for possessing CSAM. So this moment of sitting down and giving him the talk was a very calculated move to make it look to the public as though Josh was innocent, the family was innocent, they were doing everything the right way, and he was waiting until marriage. It didn't matter that that simply wasn't true, it was about the appearance of it being true. Meanwhile, the family was very aware of the fact that he was a sexual predator. The choice to include this scene was very intentional. Many fundies, not just quiverfull, warn of the appearance of wrongdoing, which I think comes from a verse in the Bible where it talks about not causing your brother to stumble. And this is also used to justify shaming women for how they dress and how they look, but it's also used to say don't do anything that could be perceived as sin in any way, so as to not cause your brother to stumble by looking at it and thinking, oh, he's sinning, therefore I can too. They take this to the very extreme, to the point that they view the appearance of sinning as more important than actually sinning, claiming that even if you're not sinning, if other people think you might be, you're in the wrong. Like I said, this is used a lot to police women's bodies and how they dress, because if a woman acts whorish, they will assume she is having premarital sex or stepping out on her husband. So it doesn't matter if she's faithful to her spouse or even if she's a virgin, if she looks like she might be a whore, she's sinning. She is giving the appearance of sin, which is, in and of itself, a sin to them.
We try not to shake body parts around to draw attention to our bodies.
We don't want to stir up desires, different things that cannot be righteously fulfilled, that cannot be, I don't know. So anyways, our family has chosen not to dance.
A lot of quiverfull families truly abide by this and many more fringe beliefs. And let me reiterate, when I say this is a very particular sect of Christianity. This is not what every single Christian unanimously believes. I am calling out a very particular belief within a very particular section of Christianity that I think is harmful. But having so many fringe beliefs is often what leads these families to homeschooling, so as to not expose their kids to outside beliefs, so the kids don't get indoctrinated and their minds don't get changed and they don't get polluted by the world. Yes, these families that often live in houses too small to hold the amount of children they have, and that do not have the time or energy to devote to all of their children, homeschool these kids. As I said, this is to avoid any undue influence. So basically they can teach their kids whatever they want and the kids will never know any better because they don't have access to any outside information. A lot of these families also stick to strictly Christian curriculums that often misrepresent history, such as Abeka and many others. One popular one was from the IBLP. The curriculum was the Advanced Training Institute booklets. Former IBLP kids report that these booklets often contained pictures of women where you were required to look at their outfits and point out which pieces were immodest. You know, her dress is too short, her top is too low cut. This was supposed to be for school, and they were teaching people how to police women's bodies and shame them for what they were wearing. A lot of these people are indoctrinated since birth to police women's bodies like this.
How recently did you start wearing pants?
2 years ago. For us, it was so normal, and you kind of start to not think twice about it until you are surrounded with other people who are conducting their lives differently. I remember when a couple close friends started wearing pants and I was like so brokenhearted over it. I remember crying over one friend, just thinking, oh, why are they doing that?
There were certain teachers, and I want to pull out some quotes from one of the books on modesty, that equated a woman wearing pants with a moral evil.
And this sexualizing of women from day one, coupled with the notion that sex is a sin and you're not allowed to experience any form of sexual feelings whatsoever, creates the perfect storm of sexual repression and hypervigilance that creates people like Josh Duggar. Now, I'm not saying what he did wasn't his fault. His crimes are on him. But there's got to be a reason why so many people who grew up in this environment of being so anti-sex and policing women's bodies grow up to be sexual predators, abusers, and all of these things. And that certainly needs to be addressed. And this idea of always needing the appearance of being without sin is what creates people like Ruby Franke. Again, she is very much responsible for her own actions, but it should be addressed why so many strict and abusive parents come out of this environment and belief system. But Ruby Franke was so insistent on showing her perfect family to the world. A lot of these families turn to social media as a means of evangelism. Some of them even get their own reality shows. But that's why you see them everywhere. That's why you see them being very vocal about it. They are evangelizing. They want their kids to be a part of God's army, and they want you to be too.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about. So everybody says, quit exploiting your kids on social media. I'm not exploiting them. Why do I show my children? Well, God made it very clear when I started this ministry. He said, they are my glory. My children are the glory of God. They are what God has given us. They are glory. And so I show my children to show people, this is the glory of God. This is blessings.
So first off, why do family vloggers post content? Obviously, it can be a great career. It can be a great way to make money while working from home, while still getting to spend time with your kids. But Christian and Mormon family vloggers have an extra motivation, and that is evangelism. As I mentioned in my last episode, evangelism is a huge focus for Christians because they really do believe that if you don't get saved before you die, you'll go to hell. So in my mind, that is a very strong fear-based motivation for evangelism. So obviously it makes sense for you to use mass media like YouTube, reality TV, televangelism, etc., to try to reach as many people as possible with the message of Christ. If you're using mass media rather than just going out and like talking to people on the street, potentially you're saving like thousands more people from hell. I feel like because of this focus on evangelism, whether you're using mass media or not, really becomes a burden on children because they are expected to behave like perfect little Christ-like examples of a Christian family.
So they're trying to rope you in, and they view sharing their life on social media, on television, as a means of evangelizing. And it does work. A lot of people have been indoctrinated into these beliefs by these families. It is a really effective method. But what they are roping you into is submitting to your husband and everything, never denying him sex, popping out a couple dozen kids over the next couple of decades, and not stopping even if it kills you. The quiverfull movement is a movement that harms everyone involved, but primarily women and children. The kids who are neglected, abused, and parentified, and the women who are objectified for existing and told to never deny their husbands. One of the Mormon prophets once said that when a woman shows her shoulders, she is becoming pornography, because it is so ingrained in this type of ideology that a woman's body specifically is so lustful and tempting, and that men cannot help themselves around it. The big, strong men who are required to lead families cannot resist turning into an animal at the sight of a shoulder. What a perfect system to live under. Surely there will be no consequences whatsoever.
And young women, please understand that if you dress immodestly, you are magnifying this problem by becoming pornography to some of the men who see you.
Another quiverfull family are the Plaths. They also had a TV show on TLC called Welcome to Plathville, which sounds like a horror movie, and it pretty much was. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of this family drama because there is a lot. I could talk a lot about all of these kids, because there were a lot of them, and the parents themselves are also a crazy bunch. But I specifically want to talk about one kid, Ethan, the eldest of the children, who I recently found out is the same age as me. I thought he was like a lot older, but we're both 27. Also, similar side note, I recently found out Nick Fuentes is also 27. What is going on, people? What are you doing? It's baffling to look at people the same age as you and look at how different their life and circumstances are and the decisions and choices they've made. It's certainly a sight to behold. I cannot stand Nick Fuentes, for the record. Anyway, like I said, I want to talk about the oldest child, Ethan, but specifically I want to talk about his ex-wife, Olivia Marie Plath. She has recently spoke out about the abuse that she faced in her marriage with him. Or I guess I should say alleged abuse, although I fully 100% believe her. She also spoke about how, despite having video evidence of his behavior, she is often not believed on the basis that she is a woman. She also speaks about specifically how a major aspect of why their relationship came to an end is because she was becoming more progressive and he was becoming more and more extremist far right, and they could no longer see eye to eye or exist in a healthy relationship anymore.
Even later on in my marriage, when I had started deconstructing from religion and kind of landing in a more fluid space when it came to spirituality, and also rethinking my political stances and cultural views, and just kind of like opening my mind to what was out there, my ex had a really hard time with that. So much of it was us just drifting apart in life. I was deconstructing religion and politics and all these things and finding myself in a much more open-minded place. And it's very interesting that at the same time we see this culturally as well. So many young men are being radicalized towards the conservative, like all far right pipeline, which is exactly what he fell down the same moment that I was reconsidering, which is a cultural phenomenon. We're seeing more and more, even culturally, that more women are progressive and open-minded, and increasingly more young men are conservative and radicalized.
I also, in good conscience, holding the beliefs and values that I have, and with the way that you have changed, I can't see how I can do that. There's just things I'm not okay with the children that I raise growing up to think and believe. It's a matter of principle to me.
I genuinely sympathize with her, and I hope the best for her. I want nothing but good things for her. But I also want to point out how not so rare it is for husbands in this faith to become abusive partners. For men, when you were taught from the minute you were born that you are the head of the household and that women are nothing but temptresses who are meant to be your helpmeets, which is just a way of saying they exist for no other reason than to serve you, that is going to create a really negative view of women. That is absolutely going to show out in your relationship over time. And that is what I mean when I say this belief hurts women, because policing women's bodies and making them feel bad is bad enough, but when all the little things over time compound into abusive relationships and the physical and mental mistreatment of women, that is often where this leads, and it is not good. Now, I know this goes a little beyond the scope of Quiverfull specifically, because this doesn't really relate to having kids. This is something that a lot of Quiverfull families believe and teach to their children from the day they are born. And I think it's really important to be aware of all the facts that make this so harmful. Because if you were going to raise up a dozen kids, and you were going to teach them all this same harmful ideology, that is going to cause a lot more harm than just raising up one kid with this harmful ideology. Still not good, though. And let me be so clear. I am not in any way judging or shaming women who find themselves in abusive relationships or situations. It is never their fault. It is never your fault if you are being abused. Just because we can look from the outside and say, this mindset is not healthy, this is going to create problems down the road in your life and in your relationships, it's not always so easy to see from the inside, because you were taught that this is the way things are supposed to be. And quiverfull or not, you cannot always tell who is going to be abusive, because they don't always start out that way. They pretty much never start out that way, or you never get into a relationship with them in the first place. So, let me make it so clear. It is so easy to end up in an abusive relationship, and it is never your fault if you find yourself in that situation. I really just want to bring light to how this mindset and this particular sect of Christianity in Quiverfull leads to abusive relationships down the line. There's a reason why so many of these parents end up being abusive, why so many of these partners end up being abusive, and it is because of the things that they are taught and the way they're told to live their lives. But, like I said, it doesn't start out abusive. It is a frog in boiling water situation where it slowly gets worse over time. That is how they rope you in. Olivia also speaks on people saying she was ruining Ethan's reputation by publicly admitting the things he had done to her. Now, this idea of ruining his reputation might sound a little crazy to you, but in these funny spaces, the idea of talking negatively about your husband is simply not allowed, ever. Unless, of course, you're making the casual, I hate my spouse jokes that these kind of people just love. But talking about it in sincerity is simply not allowed. It is regarded as disrespectful and gossip. And since he is the head of the household, he is above you, and you are not to disrespect the head of your household. It's not the appropriate or submissive thing to do. Women are discouraged from being honest about the way in which their husbands are treating them in order to not reflect badly on the husband. So this culture raises up abusive men and ingrains in women that they cannot speak out against abuse because it would hurt the husband. And then also you're told to have a bunch of kids with this man. And so for a lot of people, they find themselves in a situation, and I don't think Olivia Plath had kids with him, but for a lot of people, they find themselves in a situation where they have multiple kids with this man that they are realizing that they just cannot continue to be with because he is abusive. But it is so hard to sever a relationship with someone you have children with. And so this quiverfull ideology of you have to have kids once you're married, it is required, is often another way in which they keep women stuck in these unhealthy relationships under the thumb of abusive men. And that is another reason of the so many reasons of why pushing this idea on people that they have to have kids when they get married is so damaging, because it can create seriously harmful situations. And especially, you get into a marriage with someone and then they begin to be abusive to your kids as well. But he's the head of the household, he's allowed to do that. Or even if it's the mother being abusive, you're still taught not to divorce the mother. You're not taught to divorce your spouse ever. So it goes both ways. You can find yourself in an abusive partnership where you can't leave because you have kids with this person, or simply because you're taught it's a sin to do this. There's multiple things keeping you trapped in unhealthy relationships, and that can hurt you, and it also hurts the children. So many children get hurt in this environment through physical, psychological, emotional abuse, neglect, and so many things. Children are the people we should be striving to protect so much because they are completely reliant on the adults, the people in their lives, to take care of them. They are not capable of taking care of themselves yet, and they require you to be there for them and to be safe for them. And so many parents, especially in the quiverfull movement, in this very patriarchal ideology, a lot of these kids just don't receive that, and it's very tragic. And that's why I talk about this, because I just don't want more people to keep ending up in that situation. And I know this video alone, it's not going to solve the problem, but if even just one person can watch this and say, hey, maybe I don't want to participate in this anymore, then it would be worth it. I lost my train of thought because a lot of this wasn't in the script, I'm sorry. But speaking of Olivia Plath, she is a wonderful leftist queen from what I know of her. I will be linking her interview that I have playing throughout this video down below so you can go watch it. I'll also be linking the book to The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, who is the daughter of Ruby Frankie. She was the eldest child, I believe, and she recently wrote this book about her experience, just her life in general, but specifically family vlogging and living with a mother like Ruby Frankie and how that's affected her. It's a really great insight into how the exploiting of your kids for views can negatively affect these children. And because of the evangelism aspect of it, the family vlogging part is so entwined with Christian fundamentalism and the quiverfull movement, because they are trying to find as many people as possible to get their message out to, which, is something most people strive to do in general, to get their message out to the world. I'm making this video right now, am I not? But because the evangelism is such a huge part of it, that is why so many family vloggers you see are religious, because they almost believe it is their moral duty to make these videos. And in fact, a lot of these family vloggers, I think it's something Carissa Collins said, that she believes that this is something God wants her to do, and that this is her calling from God. Her response to backlash and criticism about exploiting her kids online was essentially, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, which is just an absolutely absurd and ridiculous way to respond to people saying you're exploiting your children. That's what God called me to do. But she just said out loud what a lot of these families believe in their hearts. And so that's why I bring up family vlogging in this. The exploiting of their kids online is such a huge part of quiverfull. And then there's also the reverse aspect of having a bunch of kids will get you a lot of attention online. They're encouraged to have more kids to get more popular on the internet and evangelize, and it turns into this whole environment of just encouraging them to have a bunch of kids and to put them on the internet and exploit them and teach these kids these harmful views that you were raised up in, and to continue the cycle. And if you're watching this right now and you grew up in this type of family, I want you to know I am so proud of you. You were so brave, and I hope you were doing well. If you're watching this and you also have no experience with this, I hope this was a really helpful insight. This was not exactly how I wanted to close this out, but I kind of got sidetracked. I just started talking off script. I wanted to wrap it all in a neat little bow where everything I said comes together in this really great conclusion, and it makes a lot of sense. But I just sort of felt like I'm rambling at this point. Frankly, this is quite a difficult subject for me, again, because I did grow up in a lot of this. I didn't specifically grow up in the quiverfull movement. I only have one sibling, and I'm very thankful for that. But I grew up in a lot of the ideology that is very adjacent to this, and so that is why I speak on this. But I know the quiverfull movement isn't necessarily something that is widely known by people who are not in it or directly adjacent to it, like I was. So I just thought I would talk about that. But I hope this was informative and helped you understand a little bit more of what the quiverfull movement is and the effect it has on people. If you want me to expand any more on anything I mentioned here, or anything to do with like fundamental Christianity, evangelical Christianity, the environment that I grew up in, let me know. I can definitely make more videos about this in the future. I know I got some questions on my last one about making more and diving into more specific topics, and this was definitely a part of that. So just comment down below, and if you made it this far, thank you so much. I hope you're having a good day, and I hope this very dark, heavy topic didn't ruin your day. Hello, I'm interrupting myself here because I completely forgot to mention I'm doing a giveaway for books. And you can enter in at the Google Doc in my description. And also, while I'm here, I just thought I'd say, don't forget to check my description for that link to Incogni. But I'll be doing 2 giveaways. One is on here and one is on my Patreon. So if you are subscribed to my Patreon, you also get a second chance to enter for books. For the general giveaway, we have The Collected Poems of Emily Dickinson, The Girl on the Train, Brave New World, and Light Breakers. And there'll be 4 winners, each of which get 1 book. So 4 books, 4 genres, 4 winners. And for those who are entered on Patreon, we have 2 books and 1 winner. We have Middlemarch, and we have The Woman in Cabin 10. So 1 person will win both of those books, and 4 people will win 1 book each. The giveaway ends on the last day of January, and the winners will be announced on February 1st. 70-something people have already entered the giveaway, because I mentioned it in my last video, and that is so cool to me. I did not think that many people would enter, and I wish I could give each and every one of you a book, but I can't, so there will be 5 winners in total. And international viewers, feel free to enter too. It is not US only. But if you made it all the way to the end of the video, you get this special surprise of being able to enter in 4 free books. So thank you very much. And there will be more giveaways coming in the future. A handmade journal, handmade by me, and maybe some photography equipment after that. We'll see. I probably shouldn't keep giving my stuff away, but that's what's on the roster. So stick around for more videos and giveaways. Why is my microphone way out here? Oh no, it's falling off. My microphone fell off, so I guess that's my sign to bid you adieu. I truly appreciate the support you guys give to this channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below your opinions on this video. Share copy link because it helps so much with the algorithm. And my Patreon will also be linked down below. I have that so you can get videos early, you can get exclusive content, all of that stuff. That will be linked down below as well. For now, I am conked out. I am exhausted. So thank you so much for watching. That's all, folks. Bye!